In the spring of 1943, deep in Nazi-occupied Poland, the German military opened a new prison camp, designed specifically to hold the most determined and dangerous Allied escape artists they had ever captured. The Germans were proud of this camp. They had built it on sandy subsoil specifically because they believed that tunneling would be impossible, the loose yellow sand collapsing on any digger who tried. The prisoners who arrived at Stalag Luft 3 were no ordinary captives. They were Allied airmen, officers who had sworn a duty to escape, and among them was one of the most remarkable men of the entire war. Roger Bushell, squadron leader, RAF, was a South African-born barrister, a pre-war Olympic skier, and the most dangerous escape organizer in the entire German prison system. Bushell's plan was unprecedented in its scale. Not one tunnel, but 3 simultaneous tunnels, codenamed Tom, Dick, and Harry, so that if the Germans found 1 or 2, the third would still be ready. Over 600 men were involved in the escape organization: diggers, carpenters, tailors, forgers, lookouts and engineers, all working in secret under the noses of the German guards. The lookout system, codenamed the duty pilot system, was run with military precision, with designated watchers called stooges, who tracked every German guard's movement throughout the entire camp every hour of every day. The tunnels were engineering masterpieces, each one 30 feet deep to avoid the German seismic microphones buried around the camp perimeter, and over 300 feet long. The biggest engineering challenge was air. The tunnels were too long and too deep for natural ventilation, so the prisoners built a bellows pump from kit bags and hockey sticks to push fresh air through pipes made from powdered milk cans. The excavated sand, bright yellow, immediately identifiable against the grey surface soil of the compound, had to be disposed of without the Germans ever seeing it. The sand dispersal team, nicknamed the Penguins because of how they waddled with bags of sand in their trousers, moved over 100 tons of yellow sand without the Germans ever noticing. In September 1943, disaster struck. The Germans discovered Tunnel Tom, just 18 feet from the wire, but Bushell had anticipated discovery. Tunnel Dick was immediately converted into a storage facility for escape materials, and all effort was concentrated on Tunnel Harry alone. The forgery department, run by a man called Master Forger, produced over 400 fake documents, including identity papers, travel permits, and even Gestapo passes, all made with handmade ink and stolen paper. The tailoring department transformed prison uniforms and blankets into convincing German civilian clothes and military uniforms, complete with buttons, lapels, and correctly colored dye made from boot polish and ink. By March 1944, Tunnel Harry was complete, 336 feet long, 30 feet deep, with a railway, lighting, an air pump, and passing bays, an underground engineering achievement that rivaled anything built above ground. Bushell planned to send 200 men through the tunnel in a single night, the largest mass escape in the history of warfare. On the night of March 24th, 1944, the escape began, but almost immediately, the first problem emerged. The tunnel exit came up short of the tree line, ending in open ground visible from the guard tower. Despite the setback, the escape continued, men crawling on their stomachs across the open ground one at a time, guided by a rope, timing their dash to avoid the sweeping searchlight. Then, a second crisis hit. An Allied air raid caused the camp's electrical system to fail, plunging the tunnel into complete darkness and halting the escape for over an hour. By the early hours of March 25th, 76 men had made it through the tunnel, but the 77th man was halfway through when a guard stumbled upon the tunnel exit, and the alarm was raised. 76 men were loose in Nazi-occupied Poland in the middle of winter, with forged papers, civilian disguises, and compass headings toward Switzerland, Sweden, and Spain. Hitler was informed at breakfast, and his reaction was immediate and devastating. He ordered that all recaptured escapees were to be shot. This was a war crime. The Geneva Convention explicitly protected prisoners of war from execution. But Hitler did not care. One by one, the escapees were caught at railway stations, at roadblocks, in fields, some within hours, others after days of freedom. The recaptured men were not returned to the camp. They were handed to the Gestapo, driven to remote locations, and shot in the back of the head. In total, 73 of the 76 escapees were recaptured, and 50 of those 73 were executed by the Gestapo on Hitler's direct order. Roger Bushell, the architect of the entire escape, was among those executed, shot on a road near Saarbrücken on March 29, 1944, just 5 days after leading the greatest escape in history. Only 3 men made it to safety: a Norwegian officer named Per Bergsland and a Dutch officer named Bram van der Stok reached neutral territory, and an Australian named Bob Nelson crossed into Switzerland. When the remaining prisoners at Stalag Luft 3 learned of the executions, the reaction was not despair, it was rage and a solemn oath that those responsible would face justice. When the war ended in May 1945, British intelligence launched one of the most focused war crimes investigations in history, the hunt for every Gestapo officer who participated in the executions. Over the following years, 18 of the Gestapo officers responsible were tracked down, tried, and executed for the murders. Justice delivered one killer at a time. The 3 men who escaped, Bergsland, van der Stok, and Nelson, returned to military service and lived to see the end of the war and the defeat of Nazi Germany. Stalag Luft 3 was liberated by Soviet forces in January 1945. The prisoners, who had not escaped, finding the camp empty of guards, the tunnel Harry still intact beneath the ground. In 1963, a Hollywood film called The Great Escape brought the story to the world, but changed it significantly, adding American characters who were not present in the real escape. The real story needs no Hollywood additions. What 600 men built with spoons, stolen bedboards, and powdered milk tins is more extraordinary than anything a screenwriter invented. Today, the site of Stalag Luft 3 in Żagań, Poland, contains a small museum, and beneath the ground, the remnants of Tunnel Harry still exist, 30 feet down, preserved by the Polish soil for 80 years. Every year, on March 24th, a ceremony is held at the memorial, attended by descendants of the men who dug, who ran, and who were executed, to remember what 600 men chose to do when the world told them it was impossible. What Roger Bushell and 600 men built was not just a tunnel. It was a statement that no matter what the Nazis built to contain them, the will to resist could not be imprisoned. 76 men crawled through a tunnel they built with spoons. 50 of them were murdered for it, and the world has never forgotten what they did or why they did it. They called the tunnels Tom, Dick, and Harry, the most ordinary names for the most extraordinary act of defiance ever carried out 30 feet underground. On the night of March 24th, 1944, 600 men held their breath, and 76 of them crawled toward the only thing that mattered, the chance, however small, to be free. 50 of them never came home, but what they did in that camp, with those spoons, in that sand, will be remembered as long as the idea of freedom means anything at all. They were not soldiers in a battle, they were prisoners with spoons. And they changed history anyway. Tom, Dick, and Harry, 3 tunnels, 600 men, 76 who escaped, 50 who were murdered, and one story that will never be forgotten.